So maybe a different video today. As you can see, I'm sat in a bit of a strange position, but the sunlight I get through the window is right here. So you're gonna have to deal with it. I wanted to make a video on a topic that has been, over the years, one of my greatest teachers for what it's shown me in this age of Aquarius, or you could say the coming into sovereignty, coming into your own, yourself, your knowing of your potential to fall madly back in love with who you are. My whole life has been spent really in solitude, as we all really are. We are all alone as one. It's such a strange paradox. No matter if you try and, tape yourself to another, whatever. I've always had this, and by the way, I'm speaking a lot more today in terms of stories about myself, so just in case it relates to any of you, I feel that really helps when I listen to someone talk about their own experiences and I can relate to those sections of what they've experienced in that incarnation. And there's been such a theme of solitude, this whole existence of this body anyway, and a guilt that's followed that solitude that has slowly faded away, think of it as a truck that's driving into eternity, and it knows that it's falling madly back in love with itself. It's had lifetimes of others, relationships, classic love and compassion for others, but this feels to be like completely set up in this incarnation to fall madly back in love with the self. And the guilt that goes along with that was the test of really setting the standard for anyone else that also wanted to fall madly back in love with themselves in this incarnation, to know that in this sovereign place, that was all that really needed to be seen, especially in this incarnation, was the gift of solitude, the gift of seeing that really in my solitude, I was the most expanded. That's where I felt God the closest. As myself, really, it's this strange sense of the pull of otherness and the meeting and the joy of otherness, but the knowing that what was truly felt in the heart, the most bliss, the most love, was always felt in this almost falling backwards, right? Asking, what did I truly want? Relationships had lost their sweetness. Sex had lost its pull, because what I saw was so much of this world. It's like you come into this body and you look around and you're just, especially in the early years of when it's so veiled, you're looking around and you're wondering and you're trying to take cues off the actions of the other members of that race, because especially with the mother and the father, how they act, you take your cue. And there was a lot of what I saw was a polarization within. It's like a resolution of the internal resistance of masculine and feminine, and looking for like sex, for example, to replenish that and resolve that. But the theme of this incarnation has been feeling so complete within and not understanding why I wasn't having this, this real desire for someone else or for something. And the guilt was always about not having that same action. And so what started to completely give way to this ocean of bliss, and it trickles up the spine at times. It's always the same theme of releasing the conditionings of reaching out for something, and knowing that this split that you feel inside that wasn't there anymore, that didn't need the need for relationships, careers, validation even, to rest in the soul was so delicious, because I didn't have to change my actions to fit what other people that still had that split within, that were looking for things and achievements. And it's almost like you take on that role to see what's all this about, right? Let's try the relationships, try the things, but oh no, it's always me I'm looking for. There is only myself to find in all of these objects. So I started to just not go out of myself to find and see that as you start to fall back into this self, into this real solitude, the world becomes a collapsing into you as you, and the more you chase for that split to be resolved, the more you make it more real, and the chase continued. So it started this melting pot, that everything started collapsing back in, and it's as if the chakras, the energy centers burst open, because what you're looking for, even in sex, even if you go to meet a friend in a non-romantic way, everything's sex really when you start to see this. When I say sex, I don't mean putting, actual porn sex. I'm talking about the way that you smile at someone, the way that you relate. The whole of existence is a relationship. This is you can't get away from that fact. And so this new sexuality started to come online that wasn't about the old sexuality of needing a gender, that I'm a gender, you're a gender, and we're going to come together, right? It was more just like this feeling of genderlessness, like the resolution had come in those divine masculine, those divine feminine in such an equal balance. Like it was as if there was just a one signified being, a God sovereign being, that didn't need to lean on anything, didn't need to lean on polarity, didn't need to even say good, evil, masculine, feminine. It was just that the soul revealed itself as genderless, as completely unpolarized, as just one single substance. And this went hand in hand with solitude, because I can't find very many beings that have that level of balance within. So when I do come across a being like that, there's so much joy, there's so much love, because we meet in solitude. We meet in... think of magnets inside. When there is a polarity within, there's a division within, you feel that pull from someone, you feel their need for validation, and you almost have to play a role for them, and it just gets a bit... But when you meet someone that has the polarity as so equal, so sovereign, it's even making me smile, because you know it, because they don't want anything from you. And even walking down the street, you feel these pulls of this thing, and you don't want to fall into blame, you don't want to fall into... I was about to say fall into avoidance, but this was the one guilt for me, was that I needed to be out in the world constantly. But the energy I felt being depleted by trying to make relationships work with those that were depolarized, those that were fractured in that way, I got more and more confirmation when I come into contact really with beings that weren't from this world. Like, you get to that rim of consciousness where it's really the ascended mastery realms, where there's so much sovereignty that I actually want to open to beings that are in their sovereignty as well, because there's such a joy of meeting in solitude, meeting in oneness. We celebrate our wholeness, right? We have to meet in the celebration of what I already have found within. So I had to get over this guilt that I was never going to make it work in a successful joy of joining if someone wasn't already in that as well. And this is not to avoid people and things. I'll always be there and reflect, and always reflect really to show someone that they can also fall in love much more deeply with themselves. If this is one thing I've never really said before, but I get so many emails and DMs, and sometimes you sense this projection of a pedestal or something I have that you don't, and we're just wiping that away, please. We're all one being. We're all one infinite, indestructible creator being. And I can feel it. I can feel it anytime there's a need for completion outside of the self. And it feels horrible. It's almost takes too much effort to even have to keep this thought going that there's something outside of yourself. Right? It's almost, this is what I said in a previous video, the only struggle is the struggle against ease, the struggle against seeing this is so simple, it's only you want. And this then comes into, well, what's the new energy of relationships then? I sometimes feel I've been seeded into this collective because I just see the future. We all do really, if you actually open your eyes. The future relationship is not completion in marriage or in each other like a puzzle fit. when you feel depolarized, you'll need to fit each other to complete. But when you feel whole as a circle, you're meeting in completion and you celebrate what's in. And even sex becomes so different. The new sexuality, it's about almost just retaining your innocence and your childlike innocence for your love of self. And in this love of self, that's where you meet someone. You know, there's no need for any kind of discipline, really. It's respect and it's loyalty to serve love, but it's, you know, you go for dinner, for example, and you don't need to talk. Talking is so 3D. If I could just look at you and breathe and smile, and there's telepathy. I'm so telepathic, but when you don't receive that telepathy and you need to speak, language is the distortion. And language is great. It's a medium, it's a bridge. But we can start to open to this intimacy of mind that sees and feels and touches and tastes with emotion and not duality. Do you see the difference? I think those that are forerunning this new type of God sovereign being will find these relationships so nourishing, because it's like you don't feel as though you have to abandon your own sovereignty to fit the paradigm of relationship. So this is what I'm so patient about as well, is when you do come into contact with these beings, and sure, a lot of them are more, like I see a lot of ascended masters on YouTube. There's certain beings that it's just such a confirmation of what I know within, which is sovereignty and relationships not being about... This is the funny thing, actually. I've always wondered, why is the sexual desire for bodies completely almost gone? Like this need for a body to complete. It's always been like the traits of what I look for is the sovereignty, the love of self. When someone loves themselves, it's so attractive because I know I can surrender myself into that because there's no energy feeding going on. There's no depletion going on. All right. But if someone is kind of fractured in a way and someone else is fractured, they're a perfect mix. And the only lessons they're supposed to really be learning together is that what they were looking for is themselves. And there's beautiful relationships still in this duality. I know we've had thousands throughout the years, throughout their lifetimes. But we don't want more completion in the external images. And it seems to be very much tied into biology and the ways that we're taken into the gravity of that human condition to not be fulfilled in the self. That's what it feels like. And your job in this incarnation, especially as we go into the golden era, is to open to what you know is in your heart, which isn't the gravity of mind, it's the gravity of the soul, which you have to come into that unity of yourself, not the gravity of a collective that really needed to have this community spirit, this me and you, otherness, compassion for others. But that's an old era. That's an old time that needed gravity to form some kind of collective. Otherwise, it's just space and consciousness. There's no template for evolution. But gravity works both ways. Binds and it unbinds. All right, I think that's everything I wanted to say today. Just confirmation for anyone out there that just knows in their heart where they're going. And if I can reflect that sovereignty back to you, that you don't need to feel guilt for not having the same desires as other levels of consciousness, or the same need for others, or the same, fall back madly in love with yourself. It's where it's all going. And then I don't like the phrase New Earth, but in these new eras, you'll see people just completely in their own sovereignty, their own self-love. And if there is a meeting, there's a joining, it's in that celebration of wholeness. And so much energy is there because you're almost charging each other up, not depleting or needing anything from each other. Alright. I love you all. Because you are me. And I love myself so deeply. Alright.